Hello, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors and Cazoo, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters from across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Well, Philip, unbelievably, it's the last weekend of March, the last weekend of Q1. We're heading into April. The weather's on the change. It's all happening, isn't it?
Yeah, I got blamed for that the other day because I switched my my outdoor coats for the more summery ones for the less wintry ones. But I might have been a little bit too premature with that one. Yes. Yeah, so sorry everybody. It might be my fault for that one.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's certainly changed in the last week, but we'll be fine. We're getting used to it now, aren't we?
Yeah, and talking of last week, I know you were out and about at Car Dealer Live. So how did that go?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's I don't know, it's 5 years now, is it? I can't remember how many years Car Dealer Live's been going, but I've been involved with. Talking about the weather, I missed 1 year because as James Batchelor at Batch always reminds me, because I couldn't get there because of the snow and the fact that I was driving a BMW. At the time, so yeah, no, it was great. It was great to see a lot of people there. Great session, and one of the stories today is some of the content from that event. But yeah, very, very busy day, and interestingly, again, one of the things we'll be talking about shortly, one of our supplier specials were actually there on show as well. And as I said to Anna on our chat, I didn't get a freebie. And I know I like to pick up a few freebies at these kind of events because I don't go out that often, Curtis. But I didn't come up with any freebies actually, which I got. Yeah, didn't go down well when I got home.
You didn't manage to pick up any pens or mints?
Absolutely nothing. I only come back with something. Yeah, I only come back with something, and yeah, but no, nothing. I don't know. It's to prove that I've been to an event or something. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I do tend to come back with some freebies, but I didn't manage to get any. But no, it was great session. And we'll get onto it with the story later. But having a friend of the podcast, John O'Hanlon, on stage with me, and Craig Ford from Motability was a great day. Great day.
And next week, just to flag up, I mean, we can't go into any detail on this story because there isn't any detail yet, but the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, will announce details of its redress scheme on Monday at 4:30. So keep your ears open for that one, because we'll get to know what happens and also what the timeline is when it will start to take effect.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know whether it's been live streamed or anything at this stage from what I know, but obviously they do it after the markets have closed intentionally, which gives then the markets an opportunity overnight to consider what's been announced before reacting on the stock market. So yeah, that should 4:30 on Monday afternoon it's been announced of what the FCA plans are for the next stage of the redress scheme.
Yeah, so we'll give a full lowdown of that on next week's pods. Meanwhile, returning to this week's episode, we're joined actually by two special guests. So in the first half, friend of the pod and IMDA chairman Umesh Samani talks to us about some of the trends he's seeing in the used car market. And Umesh is always a source of invaluable insight and intelligence in the used car market, because as well as being chairman of the Independent Motor Dealers Association, he runs his own business, Specialist Cars.
Yeah. I mean, it is a great chat with Umesh, and that was on your podcast feed on Wednesday morning of this week for the full interview, and it took us a while. We on the full interview we do talk about a little bit of every time we bumped into Umesh down at AM Live on an annual basis, and we promised to get him on the podcast, and we eventually did do that. And the after the midway break, we're joined by our very own industry guru Ian Godbold for this month's top tip. And he's looking at the finishing March strong and starting April smart, and the timing of that couldn't be better. Coming out on Saturday morning for you, and obviously as the month closes with a day or two, Monday, Tuesday, really just to close that month down.
And a couple of other episodes to just look out for next week includes our review of March's trade value trends with CAP HPI. So that will be in your podcast feed on Monday.
Yeah, and the other one, as I touched on a little bit earlier, it'll be on your podcast feed midweek next week, and it's our latest in the supply specials, which this month features paint protection giant Auto Glim Life Shine. So that is one to definitely tune in for this week when that hits your podcast feed.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our supplier special episodes, then get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
Companies we've already featured in our supplier specials include Impel, Prospecting Dynamics, Ivendi, ETT, Generational, Tracker, MTC, and Jigcar. And you can find them all in your podcast feed. And if you'd like us to profile your business, then just message us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
As we said earlier, before we look at this week's headlines, here's an extract from our interview with Umesh Samani, chairman of the Independent Motor Dealer Association, or the IMDA, and owner of independent car retailer Specialist Cars, with his thoughts on how Q1 is planning out for the used car sector.
So, Umesh, turning to your day job as the owner of a successful independent car retailer, what's your take on how the used car sector has performed so far in Q1? And have there been any noticeable differences this year compared to Q1 last year?
2026, I think it's been a very, very mixed start for a lot of dealers. But for me, certainly, it started pretty well January. January is always mixed for me in a bizarre way, actually, because I know a lot of people said January is a big boost and big sales, whatever, but it's always been very mixed for me. So 2026, January started very well for me. February went very quiet for some reason. I don't know why. And then March is big upsurge again. So it's been a very mixed start for me, but I'm actually ahead of 2025 for volume and margins for both of them, which I'm glad to say.
Yeah, no, that is interesting, isn't it? And going into January, do you tend to stock up in December in preparation for January?
Do you know, I get too carried away. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. I cannot say no to nice cars. That's my problem. If I get offered anything nice, as you know, for almost 30 years, I've never bought a car from the auction. So I still source cars or buy cars directly off the private people. And I suppose the little bit of downfall with that is you can't always predict who's going to turn up on the forecourt or that phone call telling me, I want to sell this car, do you want to buy it? So you have to sort of be ready or not, if you know what I mean. So literally, even last couple of weeks, stock was getting a little bit down and the phone was just ringing saying, do you want to buy this? And I have a habit to keep saying, if it fits my profile, I want it. It's like, yes, I want that car. Yes, I want that car. And ultimately the phone calls start coming in. And to the point I'm thinking, do you know what? All these cars are just about to land. What am I going to do with them? Who's going to pay for them? But he just looks after himself, doesn't he? He just carries on. So you just have to be prepared to buy that. So in December, I did buy quite a bit, ready for the upsurge. But I said January's always been funny for me for almost every year that I've been there. Yeah.
And I mean, it's an interesting model that you've got there. So, as you say, all your cars are bought from private owners. what percentage of them typically would be coming to you for a part exchange on another car? And what percentage would be just they just want to get rid of their car? They want a buyer for the car and they come to you. How does that split?
So part exchanges coming against cars that I've got is very low, actually.
Yeah.
It's probably 15-20%.
Right. Yeah.
Just don't seem to get that many part exchanges these days.
Yeah.
People seem to find homes for them. It's just bizarre, actually. So yeah, majority are sort of straight sales, and people seem to think cash sales is a big hook. It isn't actually. I'd love to get another part exchange back in again that I can retail, because say who's trying to
Yes.
find another car,
Yeah.
and obviously different price bracket. So it is a low percentage that sort of come back in part exchange.
I mean, it's a fascinating business model that Umesh has got, and specialist cars as a business is been phenomenally successful. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary next year, and it's just good to get that sort of timely insight from Umesh. That's how we saw Q1 pan out.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it is a one-man band. It is Umesh, running that business, and he's got Harris Motors, which is the service and repair centre next to him there, as well at Specialist Cars, as well as the work he does with the IMDA, on behalf of the independent dealers. So no, it was a great interview there, and I advise anybody, just if you've not listened to that already, then do have a listen back in your podcast feed for the full interview, because if nothing else with Umesh, he is very transparent and straight up in what he does and his views on things. So do have a listen to that when you get the opportunity.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
Headlines this week come from Bloomberg AM, Car Dealer and Motor Trade News, starting with new cars in the UK lose 37% of their value less than a year after purchase. The AA is warning that the EV transition remains fragile despite some improvements over recent quarters. Dealers have been warned of changing car buyer trends as new entrants grow and old brand loyalties diminish. Pinewood's delayed Marshall Motor Group rollout to hit 2026 profits. And eBay is launching a Kia branded and dealer supported accessories store.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
So the first story is from Bloomberg UK, and I know it's a news story that you're involved in, Phil. But if I just tee it up, so that they're reporting that cars in the UK are losing more than a third of their value less than a year after leaving showrooms, as new entrant Chinese brands and discounting push used vehicle prices lower. And in March, this story reports cars less than a year old were on average worth 63% of the price they were bought for. And that's according to some data that you put together at Cox Automotive for this particular report, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something we do monitor. I mean, it's something we're looking at the time in terms of, what vehicles are transacting at in the wholesale space as a percentage of their original cost new. Now, it's no surprise because, you and I, Kurt, have covered it a few times on this podcast, and as late as sort of the last couple of weeks, where they're talking about the average discount now being £11,000 on or some kind of incentive stroke discount on an EV being on average £11,000. It's a competitive market that we're in, but unfortunately that does play into the used car market and therefore hits the residual values or that transactional price as a nearly new car. And once that car gets into sort of 3-year-old to 4-year-old, it's competitive. But when consumers now are looking at a 12-month-old, 24-month-old car, some of the offers they are more expensive than what you'd be paying for the new on a monthly payment at the minute, because the incentives are so high from the new car market. And as you mentioned there, particularly around the new entrants coming in and disrupting the marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the stats in this story are interesting. So I mentioned the one about the cars less than a year old worth on average 63% of their price. That was in March, but that's actually an improvement from the 58% that was measured in December, but still the second lowest level since this data has been collected since the beginning of 2022.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we talk about, are we back into a normal seasonal marketplace? Are we back at pre-pandemic levels since the COVID hit? And these are all questions that but the market has clearly moved on since then. But that nearly new market is becoming ever more challenging in today, and losing such a value in the first 12 months. Plus, the choice of vehicles, as you know, Curtis, are becoming ever more limited as well once you step away from those battery electric or hybrid vehicles.
So moving on to the next story, and it's the headline is AA warns of fragile EV transition despite progress, and this was a report in AM, and it's based on the AA's latest EV readiness index, which is their quarterly research they've been running for, I think, probably just the last couple of years. So it's sort of fairly new research, but it's interesting in that it's now sort of building up this picture. So this index shows improving conditions for EV adoption, but it warns that the transition remains fragile, and it's got some stats behind this. So the index rose to 53.8 in Q1 2026, and that was up from 48.8 in the final quarter of 2025, and up on 47.5 in Q3 last year, which reflects gains in affordability and gradual progress on some of the key barriers to adoption.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, this transition to EV, there is still, it is improving. I think there's probably questions whether it's moving as quickly as many would like, but they say there that much of the improvement was driven by falling used EV prices, which dropped below equivalent petrol models for the first time since the index launched there. But also, they do cite that the charging infrastructure and reliability has also shown some incremental improvement, and saying that the charging score increased from 43 with 321,000 public chargers now installed, equivalent to 39.4% of the government's 2030 target. But they do say that the upkeep performance remains stable, with 88.7% of EV breakdowns resolved at the roadside, and just 1.5% of incidents linked to vehicles running out of charge. So I suppose that's positive news in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And this particular piece, it does highlight that, despite these quarter-on-quarter improvements, the index also highlights a continued lack of consumer confidence in the used EV market. So it polled more than 12,000 drivers and found only 3% said they were confident about buying a used EV, while 22% feel confident about charging one and 30% feel less confident about driving an EV compared with petrol or diesel. So highlighting some of the uncertainty out there amongst some buyers.
Yeah, I think this is the key, isn't it? When we talk about EVs, it's this, the new car market will come, be it by stick or by carrot. It's the used market that is the one that we're trying to stimulate. And there's a comment in here from Edmund King, OBE, who's the president of the AA, saying that their UK EV readiness index shows that conditions for switching to electric cars are improving, with cheaper used EVs opening the door with more drivers. But reality is that the transition remains fragile, that low prices may be good news for the motorist looking for a bargain, but if values fall too quickly, it becomes unsustainable for fleets and manufacturers who buy most in new electric cars in the first place. So, citing to what we mentioned earlier and the challenges and this cost to the manufacturers and fleet operators in this used EV marketplace. But we'll be back after this short break with the rest of this week's headlines after the top tip from our industry guru, Ian Godbold.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors and Cazoo. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media. Next up is car retailing industry guru Ian Godbold, sharing his top tips on how to steer your business to success.
Well, here we are at the final weekend of Q1 and already at the end of March. It's set to be one of the busiest weekends in the automotive calendar. The used car market remains buoyant, with dealers on track to deliver a record month. The next few days will be intense as businesses push to hit Q1 targets, with tactical registrations playing a key role in achieving bonus thresholds. I expect many will report either a record or at least a very strong quarter. However, there's a note of caution. Easter falls early this year, the first weekend of April, and with many sales teams on holiday, there's a real risk around operational agility. Dealers need to ensure they are moving quickly, getting trade stock to auction, bringing part exchanges to market without delay, and promoting tactical registrations immediately. Failure to act quickly could result in margin pressure across both trade and retail as the market softens once increased volumes hit, particularly with part exchanges and rental disposals entering the market at the same time. What you do in the next week will have a direct impact on your April performance. Make sure your Easter weekend activity is locked in with appointments set to maximise the opportunity. Finish the month strong. If you'd like to discuss how to make the most of the weeks ahead, feel free to get in touch through Ian Godbold at igcdigital.co.uk or connect with me on LinkedIn. Have a great weekend and see you all again very soon.
Well, that's an incredibly timely top tip, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And what I found particularly interesting was the way that Ian highlighted that, okay, we're nearly at the end of Q1, end of the March plate change bunch, but bang, we're straight into Easter afterwards. So there's no breathing space, is there, between that month end and the Easter bank holiday weekend?
No, and I think that there's probably positive and negative with this a little bit. In that I think, one, it's not eroded into this first quarter. First quarter is crucial for the sector at whatever level. March is a crucial month, so at least that's out of the way. But as Ian points out there, it's the lag afterwards with holidays and straight into that long weekend. And what you don't want to do, and what he's obviously saying, is get that lag. You don't want this missing then April, that straight out of March, and you go, right, okay, that's that done. And then suddenly you wake up and it's nearly the end of April before you've realised it. And that's the bit, you've got to keep that momentum going. And, as you said, you've got to be on track and get the vehicles into the auction centres, get the vehicles done, get ready and get that cash flow going. So, I think, as they said there, I think this weekend will be a big weekend for everybody. I'm sure there'll be some phone calls happening to get some tactical activity deals done at the last days of the month.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of activity this week. It's going to be a busy time for our listeners.
Yeah, keep away from the sales administrators. Get those chocolates and flowers ready because they'll probably have a busy Monday, Tuesday, I suspect, getting everything through. But good luck with everybody on the last few days of March and the quarter. Let's have a fast finish.
Yeah, definitely. And if you would like to get hold of Ian, then as he says, you can email him at iangodbolt@igcdigital.co.uk, or direct message him on LinkedIn. He does enjoy engaging, having conversations, so do get in touch with him.
Yeah, definitely. So back to the headlines now.
Yeah, so next headline is from Car Dealer, and it is dealers warned of changing buyer habits as new challenger car brands grow, according to Cox Automotive. So this was a white paper that I know you put together, Phil, for Car Dealer Live, and it's really looking at how that influx of these new car brands is reshaping the UK car market, with younger buyers leading a shift away from traditional manufacturers. And this is the absolute crux, I thought, to the findings that those younger buyers, that younger demographic, aren't as hung up about brand loyalty as older customers.
Yeah, no, it's right. And as you say there and mentioned at the start, pleasure of we sponsored a session and did a white paper study for the Car Dealer Live, and it was myself, John O'Hanlon from Waylands, and Craig Ford from Motability Operations that were on the panel with Rebecca from Car Dealer. But yeah, it was looking at the brands, the new entrant brands, which you and I have talked about for quite a while now, Curtis.
Yeah, I know you've got a figure as well, haven't you, for how many? It's car and EV brands, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So we're looking at those the new challenges coming in and really trying to get that consumer perception towards the new entrants. Looking at it both geographically and demographically towards what those changes are. And it was really that for the dealers that should really be considering the new brands. If they're not doing, or if they're not thinking of the new brands, then what they need to think about to protect their business in their existing brand. But as you say there, clearly, the 25 to 34-year-old, which counts me and you out there, unfortunately, Curtis. But they are the ones that are shifting, and a large proportion, so 36% of the drivers have changed their preferred or would consider changing their preferred manufacturer in the last 6 months alone. So over a third of those surveys said, actually, in the last 6 months, we have changed our view, and we are prepared to look at some of the new entrants. We did highlight that, the over 65-year-olds surveyed, they're not really considering any of the new brands. It's not really on their horizon to consider any of the new brands. But actually, when you start looking at this geographically, the South, London and the South, really early adopters towards these new brands. A little bit further up my way, up further north, less so, Curtis. But then, interestingly, between Glasgow and Edinburgh, big shift between those two market areas, with who would look at the new brands compared to those who are not looking at the new brands. So it was some extremely interesting findings, because it was it was 48% in Glasgow would look at the new brands compared to 19% in Edinburgh. So even that geographic shift of perception towards new brands is quite interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely. And we were talking about the number of car brands. So you estimate you estimate, because you can only estimate how many there are, but there are now more than 75 car brands, which that will be one hell of a challenge to name them all now. Whereas if you were to rewind 5 years ago, you and I could have reasonably easily sort of named 95% of the car brands existing in the UK, but there's over 75 now. And one of the pieces of data that I was really interested in was that new entrants now account for almost 10% of registrations. So that's since the start of this year. And that's actually up on just 2.65% 12 months ago. So it shows the acceleration there of these brands. And something else that I picked up on was some of the comments from certainly John Hanlon at Wayland's about that brand loyalty. And it does look as though some of the German brands are possibly quite vulnerable in terms of how they compete against these new challenges, because he says we are looking at the shift towards entrant brands, and it's from BMW, Mercedes, and the Volkswagen Group. It's these cars that are turning up as part exchanges, and that's the real key to this, isn't it? Because dealers, dealers listening to the podcast today, they know what they're getting in as PXs and where the drift is coming from.
Yeah, and that was reflected in the study. The largest proportion of manufacturer in terms of locality of manufacturing, we didn't identify it by brands, but we looked at Germany. The German brands were the highest of those that we're looking at and prepared to look at new entrants, new challenges coming into the sector. So again, trying to highlight some of that shift in the market. And really, the closing point was that, it was really for the retailers that, really truly understand their customer base, and obviously identifying their, current brand risk of erosion towards these new entrants and things like that. So yeah, it was a great session, and the white paper is going to be readily available for everybody to have a look at in due course. So yeah, I'd advise anybody who is either considering going into one of the new entrants or looking at how they need to protect their current brand against the challenges coming from the new entrants. And just finally, Curtis, March results, Q1 results, when we get those in the next week or so, are going to be an interesting read, I suspect, as to that market share that you referenced just before.
Yeah, no, it's going to be absolutely fascinating. So we'll be taking a deep dive into that when we get the data from the SMMT. But moving on, the next headline is from AM, and it is Pinewood delays Marshall rollout, hits financial year 2026 profit outlook. So this is Pinewood Technologies has warned that delays to its major contract with Marshall Motor Group will weigh on its 2026 profits as it shifts the rollout of its Pinewood AI system at the group into the second half of 2026. And the company said the implementation timeline has slipped from an expected implementation of the first quarter of 2026, following a longer than anticipated planning phase with Marshalls to help align the rollout with other technology projects. And this is actually part of, it's a major 5-year contract between Pinewood and Marshall, which was signed in 2024, really, cementing its position as a supplier to this dealer group.
Yeah, exactly. And we spoke a bit about Pinewood recently, haven't we, with that potential acquisition that wasn't so, etc., that we talked about. But yeah, this is that. Although they do, obviously, despite the delay, Pinewood did reaffirm its medium-term outlook, stating it still expects to achieve the underlying EBITDA of between 58 to 62 million by full year 2028. And obviously that's supported by existing contracts and a strong pipeline. So, they do expect that the growth is going to support the recovery. And obviously, in terms of that progress, saying that it remains on track with major deployments, including the rollout across Lookers, which began in July of last year and scheduled to complete in the fourth quarter of this year. So, we can't forget their global presence with this as well, that obviously with Pinewood Technologies, that 5-year deal contract with Lookers, and that with the parent company, Global Auto Holdings, to implement its automotive intelligence platform across its entire dealership network, not only just here in the UK, but North America and over there in Scandinavia. So it'd be interesting to when we hear what will happen with this Marshalls One and eventually go through.
Yeah, definitely. So, last story of the week comes from Motor Trade News, and the headline is eBay launches Kia branded accessories store. So, this is news that eBay has launched an official branded store for Kia vehicle accessories, with Kia owners able to access OEM accessories and peripherals for both legacy and current models. And the listings are created by Kia dealers. And this is really important to this story because it shows that there is buy-in from dealers. So the listings are being supplied by dealers, and it's giving them a way to sell more accessories direct to their customers.
Yeah, I mean it's great, isn't it? I think obviously for the dealer network and the and Kia alongside the other manufacturers that operate that, using that eBay power and platform for the aftermarket side of the business, which is great news. And I say the store features accessories from some of the brand's most popular models, including the Seed, the Soul, the Optima, the Sportage, Sorento, and Neo. But they do say here that UK Director of Commercial Operations at eBay UK Limited said that with the launch of its official Kia store on eBay, customers now have direct access to thousands of new Kia listings, making it easier to shop confidently for manufacturer-approved accessories designed specifically for their vehicle. And Chris Lear, who's the after-sales director for Kia UK, added that Kia is committed to ensuring that their customers have convenient access to genuine accessories. And this is something that you and I have been aware of for many years. It's that aftermarket, and when you get those non-genuine parts eroding on the manufacturer after-sales supply parts through time.
Yeah, and it really is highlighting an opportunity here for Kia. If it's got its search engine optimization up and running, that any Kia owner looking for a accessory will just tap in and hopefully will be directed to a franchise dealer, one of Kia's dealers. So this could be a win-win for Kia and the network, and indeed the customers who are going to be buying original accessories, branded Kia branded accessories. And this actually does follow a number of other OEMs who have opened their own stores on eBay. Yeah, we certainly reported in recent months about Suzuki, but there's also Renault, Dacia, Ford, BMW, Mini, and Toyota, Lexus. So definitely a trend there towards getting involved in eBay to sell accessories.
Yeah, no Volvo for me and you, Curtis, on that one.
No. Still reliant on going to the dealership. But
so yeah, I mean, hopefully we've managed to capture the majority of the main headlines of this week. There, we'll obviously touch on the FCA announcement on next Saturday's headline, as Curtis said earlier. Don't forget to tune in on Monday for the latest from CAP HPI on the March trade value roundup, and midweek join the latest in the supplier specials from Auto Glim Live Shine. You will enjoy that chat there with them, and some of you will be quite surprised of how long Auto Glim have been going, if you are involved with it at all. So yeah, hopefully we've managed to cover everything this week for you.
But that really is all for now. So many thanks to you for listening to this Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines in our newsletter on Monday morning. To subscribe, just search LinkedIn for the Motor Trade Radio podcast.